Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We are so excited to have our friend here back joining us today. Marcelo Brazzi joining us. He's an author, and it's called The Liberal Record, How Liberals Changed the World. But besides being an author, he's got an amazing background in engineering and all the work he's done. So let me just have the man, Marcelo, introduce yourself to everyone to start. Go ahead.
Okay, hi. We're in the middle of a storm here, so I don't know if the
Oh.
wind. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine. Is that a live background behind you?
Yeah, right.
Beautiful.
It's we're shooting in my bedroom.
Long Beach, California. Love it.
Yeah. We're in my favorite bedroom. Anyway, there's a windstorm going on outside, so I hope that doesn't interfere with your audio.
Right now, it sounds great. You sound perfect.
Oh, okay, because we were worried about it. I mean, from here we can hear that wind blowing like you wouldn't believe it. It sounds like it's overwhelming.
And I don't hear anything, so I think we're good. Perfect.
Okay.
Go for it. Sorry you have to struggle with it, but we're good and it sounds good on our end. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we begin to get in depth more about the book.
Okay, well, gosh, I don't know where to start. Just a couple background points on my life, career, whatever. I have a master's degree in systems engineering. I was a spacecraft engineer on the Apollo moon landing spaceship program. And we can talk about that because there were some scandals that the public isn't aware of. And maybe sometime, if we have a little time, we can talk about some of those scandals. Just one note on that. There's some people that actually should be in jail, for my opinion. But anyway, in addition to that, I've traveled the world. I've taken, we've been up Mount Everest, Mount Kilimanjaro.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on chasing solar eclipses around the world. Done a lot of traveling. I taught at the University of Phoenix. I was a couple of universities. I was teaching mostly engineering and science topics. Let's see what else. Trying to think of what else I could add to that. Well, I'm living in Southern California, Long Beach, California. I have 3 growing kids, and it's been good. I've invested a lot in real estate, and I'm now in retirement, and I'm writing books, enjoying life, enjoying my grandkids, and taking care of my real estate. That's about it. I mean, in a nutshell.
Oh, well, that's a lot. And you became an author. Tell us when, why, tell us about the book.
Okay, yeah. Well, I've always been interested in writing. It's just kind of something I've always liked to do, writing about things. So I wrote a couple books. This book, it's called The Liberal Record, and it's about how the liberals have changed the world. Let me mention a couple features about the book, which I think are a little bit unique, or maybe very unique.
Sure.
And that is that the book is full of real world, actual facts and figures. It's not a bunch of opinions, and I did a lot of research for like 3 years, digging up facts and figures and events that most people are simply not aware of. I felt it was my responsibility, if I'm writing something, that I'm not just going to write any goofy garbage that pops into my head. I want to write something that readers find valuable, has some information value. And so I've focused on providing information in the book on many, many subjects. Another point about the book is I've tried to write in a style that is easy and enjoyable to read, because a lot of nonfiction books are written in a very academic type of writing with, you know, professors trying to show their peers how they can write complicated essays and things with long sentences and long words. And I just simply didn't want to do that. I wanted to make it readable by the average person so they could just follow it in easy way. One of the people I like to emulate, if possible, is an author named Bill Bryson. I don't know, are you familiar with a guy named Bill Bryson?
No, I'm not.
Oh yeah, you should read his work. It's fascinating. He's an incredible writer. I mean, he's several bestsellers, but he writes in his, in a way that when you're reading it, you don't feel like you're being tutored or lectured. You feel like you're, part of his thing. He's written many books, and like I said, very popular. So I try to take that approach to writing, the approach of being more down to earth, casual writing. And in terms of some of the unique information that most people are not aware of, let me mention just one item. The book is full of them, but let me just mention one item. We all think of Benedict Arnold as a traitor. That's the end of the story. He's a traitor.
I know that.
Yeah, everybody, nobody knows much more about it than that. But I did a little research on it, and the story's a little more complicated. He Well, let me say something else first. I'd like to mention two turning points in our history. And one of the turning points involved Benedict Arnold. He was well, first of all, the Americans in the Revolutionary War were trying to get the French to support us and be involved with the Revolutionary War. But the French were reluctant because they thought, oh, America's got no chance of beating the English. We're not going to support you. We're not going to get involved in a losing cause. So they were kind of holding back. However, at the Battle of Saratoga, which is a turning point in American history, Benedict Arnold was one of the main players. He was one of the generals that kind of made some very, very major, important decisions, and we won that battle. We may have won it without him. I'm not going to say he was the sole reason, but anyway, we may have won that battle without him. But that battle, Saratoga, convinced the French to support us. And that was a turning point. The final battle of the Revolutionary War, and all this stuff is in my book. The final battle of the Revolutionary War was the Battle at Yorktown. And that was between Americans and I think it was General, I forget the English guy's name. But anyway, at that battle, this is important. This is a very, I don't know, I consider it very important. Most people should be aware of, but they're not. And that's why I'm putting it in my book. But at the Battle of Yorktown, the last battle of the Revolutionary War, the French had 9,000 troops. The Americans had about 8,000 troops. So the French were more represented than we were. In addition to that, the French had 29 battleships that prevented the English from bringing supplies and support to their army. So the French were very much involved in our winning the Revolutionary War. And that was a turning point in American history. And Benedict Arnold was in the background and being involved in that work. But let me add one other thing. Benedict Arnold did not get along with his superiors. And for reference, we can think of Douglas MacArthur in America. Douglas MacArthur did not get along with Roosevelt and with Truman. They had disagreements, and it's when you got people who are strong-willed, strong-minded, opinionated, they're always arguing, about stuff, MacArthur eventually got dismissed by Truman, and he got relieved of his post. There's a whole story there, you know, but anyway, that's just the bottom line. And that's what happened to Benedict Arnold. He had a big controversy going on with his superior, a guy named Gates, General Gates. And Gates kind of shoved Benedict Arnold off to the side, even though he had been a great accomplished general. So he says, you know, screw you, and he went over and joined the English. But that's just one example of the kind of information that's in the book. I'm just trying to say, there's a lot of stuff that people are not aware of, okay? Another turning point, and I think these are critical in our history. Another turning point is when we changed from being in the past. Most of the older people would know, some of the younger people might not. But our government was, there was differences of opinions. There always was, always is. But there was cooperation and there was compromise, and we got along. You know, different parties and different people for different. They got along. We accomplished things. You know, many things. You know, we can have a whole list of all the accomplishments we've had over the years. And then something changed. Something changed that the world of government and politics today is a completely different world. Completely different. And a lot of people aren't aware of that. Younger people maybe think that's the way it's always been. It's not. It's not. It changed. And I think this is important. And one of the main topics of the book, not a main topic, but one of them, is that in the past, like I said, we had a lot of compromising and cooperation. In 1949, we passed a bill called the Fairness, I forget what it's called, Fairness Program. That was passed in 1949. And what the point of that was, that if one party or one person said something or done something, the other party had equal time. So in other words, the network, if somebody on the network said something that was outrageous or out of line, the other party would have equal time. You know, somebody say, well, that's a violation of the First Amendment and freedom of speech. Well, no, it's not. It's just saying providing equal time to the other party. Well, it turns out that the Republicans are very much against this. They fought it from day one. You know, they've opposed it all the way in. But it was in place for like 40 years. Fairness in broadcasting, and both sides had equal say. One example of that is some maybe younger people may not be aware of it, but again, it's something that's kind of relevant. The older people will remember a guy named Joseph McCarthy. The McCarthy was a senator from Wisconsin, and he went on a one-man campaign demonizing everything in the world of the government, the Hollywood, you know, and he was calling everybody communists and traitors, and you know, he's saying that the State Department was full of communists and all this stuff he's going on. I mean, he's making it all up. Yeah, I mean, he's just you know, pulling it out of the air and making this stuff up. Well, guess what? The Fairness in Broadcasting Act held him accountable. So Hollywood producers and other people were allowed to have equal time, so that to rebut and you know, just give the other side of the story. Well, it turns out everybody finally realized that McCarthy was a big fake. He was just making up a bunch of lies. He got eventually he got dismissed from the Congress or from the Senate, and he was out of the Senate and he was gone. But that was a good example of how things were in the past. Now, we take the 1949 Fairness in Broadcasting Act, and go fast forward to 1987. Ronald Reagan was president, and Republicans were in control, and they repealed the Fairness in Broadcasting Act. They repealed it, so now it is no longer in effect. Well, guess what? The day after the Fairness in Broadcasting Act was repealed, a guy named Rush Limbaugh, plugged in his microphone, and from that day forward, the world changed. I mean, that sounds dramatic, but it's true. It actually is true. From the time that Rush Limbaugh plugged in his microphone, the day after the Fairness in Broadcasting Act was passed, everything changed. And if I can, go a little bit farther, talking about some of the things that are different today than they were back there. The first thing that was done was the Republicans. Well, they had two objectives, but they're both kind of the same objective. And the first objective was to redefine the word liberal. The word liberal means the same thing in every language, in every country, for all years, no matter what. Liberal is that's it. But the Republicans and Rush Limbaugh, it was their campaign. They were on a campaign to change the meaning of the word liberal. And today, if you talk to some people, well, what is a liberal? You'll get some pretty crazy answers. Their audience has been trained to think of liberals as demons from alien planets. They're out to destroy the world and kill everybody, and make all their kids become homosexuals, and drink blood out of babies, all kinds of crazy stuff. But people believe it. So they changed the definition of the word liberal. And if you talk to somebody, I've talked to a lot of people, and they say, well, liberal, that was the old division. Oh, now the new liberals are different. No, they're not. The definition, let me hit on this. In the book again, I talk about the definition of a liberal and a definition of the word conservative. There's two opposites, sort of opposites. The word liberal means to be open-minded, to open to new cultures, new people, new ideas, new procedures, open-minded to new food, different kinds of people, different races. You're open-minded and you accept a lot of different things. The opposite of that is the conservatives, and the conservative mentality, and I'm not knocking them, but I'm just saying that's the way it is. They like to keep things the same. They want the same old things, and that's fine. In some cases, that's very, very good. I mean, in many cases, that's very good. But in general, that stops us from making progress. And again, in the book, I have a long list of liberal accomplishments that have come because of the liberal approach to not being afraid to make changes. One of the good ones is prohibition. We outlawed liquor sales. You couldn't sell liquor. Well, the liberals thought that was a bad idea, and eventually, 10 years after that amendment was passed, they repealed it. So now you guys can drink liquor. Thanks to liberals. And it's like women voting. Again, the conservatives say, why do we want women voting? You read some of the quotes I put in the book about some of the things that people believed about women. They really honestly believe women should sit at home barefoot and pregnant, and they should never be out in public. They just said, one quote I think was that, well, if women are allowed to vote, they're gonna lose their mentality. They won't know what to do. They're gonna get confused and all kinds of crazy stuff. Well, the liberals got the amendment passed that allowed women to vote. Another one was the 40-hour work week. Another one, Another one today, more recently, is the gay marriage and legalization of marijuana and the outlawing of slavery. Those are all liberal movements.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, um, then, so there was a effort to redefine the word liberal, and at the same time, there was a part of that same strategy was to develop and cultivate as much hatred of Democrats as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everything that Democrats did was criticized. If Biden came out with a cure for cancer, he would be criticized for why did it take you so long? And look at all the doctors you put out of business and all this stuff. In other words, just a one-sided, not objective approach.
Mm-hmm.
And let me stop here and read. I like to read
Sure.
just a couple lines that you will not believe. I guarantee you will not believe this. But these are some comments that I received regarding Democrats, okay? And this is actual quotes. I'm not making this up. In fact, you can't make this up. Here's one. There will be holograms of alien spaceships in the skies. Yeah, and they will use 5G and some kind of sonic thing to give the impression that aliens are speaking to us. These are quotes that people believe this.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is many professional athletes are part of devil worshiping cults. Now, I'm not saying that all people on the right are Republicans or believe all this stuff. It's probably a small percentage. I would guess maybe 20%, something like that. I just a guess. I don't know. But the point is, there are all of these crazy things out there that people are buying into.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all goes back, I believe, and I think it makes sense, to the fact that once you've established a certain group is evil or that there are terrible people, they're whatever, they're out to destroy everything, all that, and you build up a strong hatred of a certain group of people. From that, once you've accomplished that, then you can tell them anything. You tell them anything and they'll believe it. A guy named one of Hitler's best buddies was a guy named Goebbels. Some of you people may be familiar with Goebbels. He was
Mm-hmm.
the
Yep.
propaganda. Okay, yeah, he was the propaganda minister for Hitler, and he said, if you keep repeating something
Uh,
often enough, people will. Let me correct that. If you keep repeating a lie often enough, people will begin to believe it. It will become the truth. You keep
mm-hmm.
repeating a lie, it becomes the truth. And he also said, truth is the enemy of our government.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want people to know. But that's the point. And the point is that after they've repealed the fairness doctrine of broadcasting, after that, the lies have been, people are at a point now where they just believe anything. They'll believe there was a stolen election.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me comment on that too. If you look at the pre-election polls, polls from both Fox and from GOP polls and 160 polls, every one of them averaged out to be exactly what the election turned out to be. And so now, if all of these polls from dozens of agencies all predicted exactly what happened, how the heck could there have been any fraud? How
Mm-hmm.
could there have been a stolen election? It just doesn't make any sense. And when I when I bring this up to my friends who are deniers, election deniers, you know what their answer is? Their answer, I tell them all that. I say, well, here's, you can't highly deny it. This is true. Their answer is the election was stolen. That's what? Yeah, the election was stolen. Well, wait a minute. So it's just a matter of another famous Italian quote that I like to refer to is a quote that you cannot win an argument with facts. And you think that doesn't make any sense, but it does. People are committed emotionally to certain things, whatever they are, and the facts don't matter. It doesn't make any difference. So, no matter what the poll said about the election, people who believe the election was stolen, they're going to believe it no matter what.
No matter what. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's pretty much about what I wanted to say about the book. Do you have any comments or questions or
Well,
concerns?
I just love like we've been talking for a little while, and then last week I didn't know all this about your engineering background, and because you're such a modest person, right? We do our introductory talking, you just say, "Oh, I'm not, I wrote this book," and we talk about the book. Wow, what a life you've lived. What a career you've had. I'm sure you get that all the time, but you're probably just like, well, that's just me. That's fine. Working with Apollo, oh my goodness. I mean, that in itself, that's fascinating. Politics to me is good, but that's really fascinating. And I commend you on that and all the work you've done. And then you said you were climbing mountains. Of course, you were going with your daughter on these vacations. I mean, you're such an adventurer, such an explorer. And what made you, and clearly very opinionated, and you're a very smart man. What inspired you to write this book? And when is the next?
The next, the next one I'm only thinking about is the second edition of the first book, maybe. I've also written another book, which is not, I did not write for public consumption. I self-published it like I self-published this book. By the way, side point, I am looking for a publisher for my self-published book, and I guarantee any publisher that this book is a lot better than most of the books I see out there. But anyway, I wrote the book because I was just very bothered by all the disinformation out there, and it just bothered me that we had to set the record straight, and so I mean I got the first book I wrote was just about family and ancestors and my philosophy of life and some of my adventures. I've always wondered about my ancestors. So my family, they came from northern Italy, the Italian Alps, and I visited there. We've been there, and I've met my cousins back there. But there's very little information about my family heritage, and I'm sure that's probably true of most people. Most people, don't really know about where their great grandparents were, who they were, where they came from. So I wanted to put down in writing for future generations, for my grandkids and great grandkids, who we were, who we came from, what kind of people they were, what they did for a living, that kind of thing. And I remember one time I was visiting one of my cousins, and her grandson had my book. He didn't know that I wrote it. He didn't know I wrote it. And he comes to me and says, "Oh, hey, you ought to read this book. It's about the family, the Brazzi family." And I said, "Hey, do you know who wrote that book?"
Yeah.
No, it's a good book. And I said, "Yeah, I wrote it." So yeah, I wrote that, and I think everybody should be aware of their family background and who the people are. I mean, I would love to sit down and talk with my great grandfather. I would love. So anyway, so I've written that book, and I don't have any other plans except maybe a second edition of the book.
Well, we are also out of time. I apologize. We're over 30 minutes, but it's good having you here. Remind us how we can reach you, and we'll hopefully talk soon. Hope that windstorm gets better.
Yeah. Well, the wind seems to have died down. And my email address is marcello.brazzi@aol.com. That's Marcello with one L and Brazzi with two Z's at AOL.com. I also have a website for the book, and it's one word, The Liberal Record, at .com, at theliberalrecord.com. And it's one word, all lowercase. So
Mhm.
those are my contacts. Anyways, very nice talking to you. You're a great
You
host.
too. Thank you. Good listening to you and speaking
Yeah,
with you. And we'll
you
talk
know,
again soon, I
you have
hope.
such an upbeat personality. I
Well,
really
thank
love
you. I just am a nice person, just like yourself. And I just love hearing your stories and your thoughts and philosophies. Thank you so much. Have a great day. And to all of our listeners, stay tuned. More of the show is on the way.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.